Right, so the next thing we're going to have a go at is buttonholes, and this works with this buttonhole foot. The idea of this is you open up the back of the foot, just pull it open, you put your button in and close it up again. It's really simple, isn't it? So what we need to do now is set up our machine for that. We need to take the IDT off, and we need to take that foot off. So take that out of the way, and I need to put my buttonhole foot on. Just position it underneath and you should be able to click it on. What I'm going to do first of all, just to get that all out of the way, is needle down, needle up. I'm just going to whip that piece of thread underneath and out the way, because that is a bit of a nuisance if you've got it sticking out the top. So now we need to set up our machine. So I'm going to pick a buttonhole stitch. I'm going to go for number 25. That's the first of the buttonholes. So we've got that on screen, and what we need to do, can you see under here we've got a lever, and it's got a picture of a buttonhole on it, so you can't forget what it's for. You just literally grab hold of that and pull that down. Oops. Foot came off. I managed to push the foot off with it. This acts like a switch, so where you've got this piece here and similar piece at the back here, as the foot goes backwards and forwards, that lever will hit those two stops, and that's what makes it change direction. Right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to put my piece of fabric underneath. You need to make sure that foot's actually, because it's staying on, is it? Just a second. Right, just need to make sure that foot, because it's sprung, you need to make sure it's on and push to the front. But we're just going to do a buttonhole going backwards, and it should stitch on the right size for that button. So let's just go for it. So it goes straight backwards to start with. I'm just going to move my camera around so you can see what's going on here better. There, it's done one side and now it's going up the other. Bar tack at the end, comes forward. Let's see that. And it cuts it. Okay, so I'm just going to shift that camera back to its original place. Let's just lift that up, take that out, and you can see that there? That's a perfect buttonhole. Now, the proof of the pudding is, does it fit our button? So I'm just going to take the button out the back. And there's our button. Let's just trim that up. Get rid of the bits of thread. Now, I don't know if you noticed I put stabiliser on the back of this. Buttonholes will come out much neater with stabiliser on the back, so it's just a case of now very carefully opening that up. If you put tearaway stabiliser on the back, that's the best. This was just an offcut of cutaway that I had. So, right, proof of the pudding. Does the button fit? Look at that. Perfect. Goes through, but it's nice and snug, and that's what you want, isn't it? But I think that's pretty cool. That's pretty neat and very, very easy to do. So now we're going to look at just how easy it is to actually move the needle about. Sometimes we sort of try to line up with something on the machine, and that's quite difficult, but the edge of the foot is really easy to line up with. So if I take this piece of fabric and I line up with this edge of the foot here, there we go, and I just pick a straight stitch. Just going to move that to 3mm, and I go along and just use the edge of the foot as my guide. That's really easy to follow. Okay, I can move the needle across by just changing what effectively is the stitch width, but because it's a straight stitch it has no width, so what it does is it moves the needle across. So I can move that right over to the right hand side and still use the edge of the fabric against the foot as my guide, and then I can perhaps take it the other way a little bit and move that to 1.5, so I've come in slightly, and then I could actually just reflect the whole thing side to side, so actually take it from this side all the way to this side, just like that. So it's really easy to alter the needle position to what suits you, rather than having to sort of fudge it and make sure that it is where you want it to go. But it just means you can use a foot with a guide and move the needle to suit you, rather than you having to do it by eye. Really helpful. Right, next thing is a plique, so let me just take that off. Now, it's really good to have decent applique stitches. Quilters use them a lot, but you can use them in dressmaking and all sorts of things. And you know, having a decent applique stitch really makes it look good. So I'm going to applique that little bit of fabric onto the black. So on our stitches, I'm just going to take this camera off a minute so I can show you the stitches at the top here. Really nifty this, isn't it? Being able to take it off. So I'm going to go for this sort of thing. I think 42 is probably going to be the one. So if I go to here and tap in 42, and there's my stitch up on the screen, and I can change the size, I can change all sorts of things, but I think it'll be okay as it is. I'm just going to go with it like that. So let me pop my camera back. I do love the way this thing works. Right, so you need to know your stitch. So it's going to start, I need to start at a corner. I'm just going to drop my needle down. That's it. Let's pop that down. And I'm just going to follow the edge. Now what we were saying about needle positions, if I wanted to, let's just put that up. I could play about with the width and everything else so that I could get it to look different. But I'm just going to go with this as it stands. Now go slow, and you can control this by using your speed control. And I want to get to the corner. Now, how close am I to the corner there? Not quite there yet. So I'm just going to... Right, now spin it round. It's really precise, isn't it? Look how neat that is. Okay, and off we go again. I can go a wee bit faster than that. So set it to a speed that you can control it at. That's the thing. Keep this nice and flat. Now I've got no bonder web or anything like that on there holding it down. It is literally just one fabric on top of the other and me sewing it. Now if I put the IDT on as well, then there is no chance that that's going to slip. There we go. Turn it. I might need to just fudge that over a little. There we go. There we are. Just do little adjustments on the corners. Look how flat that is. And obviously with the IDT on, there is no chance of that slipping. Keep that nice and flat into there. Right, you need to know your stitch as to when you've got to turn. there's my applique. I think that's come out really well, don't you? You can focus in on it. Yeah, smashing. So next thing I'm going to show you is blind hemming, and this is again pretty fabulous. You can use this foot for overcasting as well, but because it's got that slot in the back, we can use it with the IDT. So we've got the even feed on our hems as well as everything else. So if I take that foot off and we put this one on, there we go, just get our thread underneath. Now you've got a little adjustment here, which we should be able to just move one way or the other. I just happen to have a bit of black fabric that's already got a crease in it. It was obviously the centre fold, but we'll use this as our hem. Normally you would finish this off with an overcasting stitch of some sort, but we're going to do a blind hem. So that's the outside of our garment, that's the inside with our hem, and what we're going to do is we're going to fold that almost like a Z shape. If you look at the end, it's like a Z shape. So this is the front side of our garment, this is the back. I'm going to turn it over. You need to make sure that's roughly even, otherwise you'll have a wonky looking hem. But let's put that under our foot. Now you need this screwed all the way in, probably, because what we want is the needle to come down just this side, and then every now and again it's going to jump over and do a stitch into this fold. So I'm just going to, I need to actually select the right stitch, that would be helpful, wouldn't it? So on this one it would be number 15. So that's going to move our needle, that's better. So I need to actually just see where that needle goes. I'm just going to wind it behind. Can you see it's jumped across? It's going to take quite a large chunk there, so I'm actually going to move this over just so it gets a little bit of that. I'm going to move this guide in so that it sits on my fold. Now depending on how thick your fabric is, it may need to come this way, it may need to come the other way, but that should do the trick. Okay, so I'm going to start to sew. So most of the sewing is on the back bit, which would have the overcasting. But every now and again it's just doing a little stitch into the main body of the fabric. Now I'm going to close that up a little bit. I can change my stitch length down. Let's do it to a 10. And actually, if you didn't want to adjust this, you can reduce the stitch width down as well. So if I do that, there's not a lot in it, but it may just be missing that now because I've reduced the stitch width, but you can do small adjustments with that. Yeah, I think it is catching it just. I'm going to knock that back up again. Okay. Okay, so that's the back side. Can you see where I had the long stitch length and then I changed it to something a bit shorter? But if we open that up to the front side, now you've got quite big stitches here because we started off quite wide, and can you see where I reduced it down so that I just got the very, very small stitches? If they were in a matching colour you wouldn't see them. Once that's ironed, to take that crease out, you wouldn't see any of that. But that's the basic principle of a blind hem. So you do the Z fold and you work from the back of your garment and you just run along and it catches a thread every few stitches. If you wanted to actually overcast, so if we, let's just go to, let's pick an overcasting stitch. Okay, we'll go to, I don't know, 21. Let's just pick 21. Okay, won't quite be the right one for this, but it will do the job. Yeah, I mean you can use a zigzag. So can you see that's whizzed right over to them? This is when you will need to move this guide. Sometimes easier just to take it off the machine to do it. Yeah, I'm going the right way. We need to move it along. I don't know if you can see, there's a little wire in there. Let me just turn that slightly. We need it against the background or something so you can see it. There's a tiny little wire in there, and that's what keeps the edge of your fabric flat, because it's going to stitch over that wire, and the wire will stop the fabric being curled up by the thread stitching. So let's just go back the right way. Right, so I have that right over to the right hand side. Drop that onto there. So now, thread under the foot. I'm using the edge of the fabric as my guide. And it's doing an overcasting stitch. There's different ones for knitted fabrics, for wovens, for loose weaves, all sorts of different things. But I think you can get the gist of that. Can you see what's happening there? Now when you take this out of the machine, you have to remember that it's sewn over that little wire, so you need to pull it backwards before you take it out of the machine. So like that first and then bring it out, and you can see it's finished off that edge nicely. So all of that would be hidden behind. Okay. Now, having done all the utility stuff, let's have a look at some decorative stitches. I need to take that foot off, and I need to find my 2A foot in a little bag of feet here. I need to take the IDT off for these. So if I do that, foot can just go under. That's clipped on, lovely. And let's just try a couple of different stitches. So if I pick numbers as stitch 126, so that's what we've got on our screen. So there's our stitch, and I'm just going to stitch that as it comes. Let's go in there. Now the interesting thing with this, if we want to do a complete pattern repeat, if you're trying to do that by eye, it's quite hard. But if we press the thread cut button, it will get to the end of the repeat, tie off the thread and cut it for us. So we don't have to think about when to stop. Here we go. So if I take that out, it's done a complete pattern repeat. Now what we could do is we could mirror this now side to side. So if I come up here, I've got, can you see how that changes? And I can mirror it the other way. This was why we picked this pattern, because we knew it wasn't symmetrical. So I could do another repeat. I'm going to press the thread cut button, just let it go through the motions, and it'll get to the end and stop, having done a tie off. Okay, let's have a look at how that's come out. So if I do another one next to it, I've flipped it over. So I flipped this one end to end, so you can see this one is the opposite way round to that one. It started at the other end effectively. Yeah, you can see that. So you can play about with these, because not only can we do individual stitches, but we can string them together as well. So let's have a look at stitch sequencing. I'm going to do it with alphabets because it uses the same idea. So if we go, that would be your stitch sequencing. So I could do, let's go up to here. So I could do stitch 108 followed by stitch 113. You get the gist. You can string them all together and then just go, that's your sequence. Alright, it'll just do that pattern over and over again. So we can string them all together really easily. If we go to the lettering, we can actually put letters in as well. Now I'm just going to, here's the bin, I'm just going to take those two out that I've already done. I'm going to do my name because I don't know what yours is. I don't know who you are watching me, but let's do my name because fortunately I do know what that is. We can change to lowercase, we can change to letters with accents, and we can change to numbers. So if I just go across, I can get an O in there, and then come down here, U, so you just work your way around the letters until you've got what you want. And then if I press that, you can see it comes up lots of times. Now we're going to stitch that, and what we're going to do is we're going to use the thread cut button so that we only get one repeat. So if I put my foot down, so a bit more speed. You need a bit of stabiliser behind these just to make sure they stay nice and flat, but if I press the thread cut button and that light comes up, it will only do one repeat. It will stop. There we go. And it will rather conveniently cut the thread for us as well. So let's take that out. So there's our lettering. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to trim in between the letters, because at the moment they're all joined up at the bottom, and particularly the I has a little joining piece as well. Sometimes the easiest way is with the seam ripper. Obviously just be careful you don't go through anything you shouldn't. Now don't cut the back as well, just cut the front, otherwise it will all come unravelled. You can see what a difference this makes. Wish that would stop rolling off the table. Can you see the difference between all these and the S and the E at the end? So if we take all those out, that will look an awful lot neater, but it is a way of doing lettering without having to use your embroidery machine. Okay, you see that all coming together now. So that's lettering, and we can do exactly the same. Letters and decorative stitches work exactly the same way. It doesn't know that some are letters and some are decorative stitches. You can just string them together how you want. We can also play about with the standard size. You won't make it any wider than that, but we can take down the stitch length and squash it up a little bit. We can take the width down, so it'll only let you go. You just got to bear in mind that you're shortening the stitches to do this, so don't take it too low down. You've also got all sorts of different stitches for different things. For instance, if we go up to here, you've got all sorts of heirloom stitches. You know, you can use wing needle, you can use, you know, a lot of these you can use a twin needle with. So you've got lots of different options for using these stitches. You don't just have to stick to how they come. You can play about with them and change them and make them your own. Last thing I'm going to show you is free motion. So let me go back to stitch number 1, which is the straight stitch, First thing you need to do is at the back here, at the back here there's a little switch to drop your feed dogs. So if I take that foot off so you can see, if I push that across, it's quite stiff. Can you see the feed dogs have dropped? So here, so now those aren't going to be in operation anymore. Those are what give your stitches length. So when you increase your stitch length, all you're doing is making these feed dogs move more. So now I need to just change the foot over for free motion. So let's get a screwdriver. I'm going to take that foot holder off altogether. Okay. And I'm going to put this on now. There's an easy way to do this. This lever at the top here sits behind the needle screw, and that's what makes it flip up and down. You'll also find that it's quite difficult to get on the shank of the machine unless you lift the foot slightly, and then it'll go on. So, excuse me while I make this look as difficult as possible. So what I'm going to do now is just drop the needle down slightly. Did you see how suddenly that just dropped in? Because this is under tension against that needle screw, if you drop the needle down slightly, then you're not trying to fight with it. So I'm just going to drop that, screw it in. Once you actually get it threaded. Far too far up with it. There we go. And so use the nice long screwdriver, it makes life a lot easier because then you don't have to get your whole hand under there. That's it. And now I can bring that needle up. Can you see that action where it's tensioned against it? So you don't have to worry about that now. So I'm just going to do needle down, needle up, get my thread out of the way. Normally we'd use a bit of batting. I've got some here that I used earlier because we were doing stitch in the ditch at the time. Look at that, isn't that lovely? I'm going to totally ruin it now by putting this all over it. So what I'm going to do is needle down, needle up, bring my bottom thread up to the top of the fabric. If you need to, just get that. Let's get my needle in the right place, drop that down and just start to sew. Just a few stitches just to anchor it to start with, one needle down. And that's free motion. That's how it looks. Take that out to show you properly. And that's the back. I don't know if you can see the back all right. Yeah, there we go. So that's free motion. Really easy to set up. When you have finished and you want to put the feed dogs back up again, it's still the same switch at the back, but you'll notice the feed dogs don't come up immediately. Don't worry about that. All you need to do, needle down, needle up, and you can see they've come back up. And it's, I think, pretty much the same with any sewing machine. That used to be one of the things that we used to get house phone calls about, is my feed dogs won't come back up, but they hadn't dropped the needle down and up again, just to get it to bring them back up. Just a couple of other little things on the machine here. Let's get that into focus, and that's it, perfect. You've got the option to save a sequence if you want to. That saves your sequence, that recalls it, the bin we've done. You've got settings in here, you've got lots of different things. If you do want to change your thread tension, which automatic thread tension isn't the be all and end all of everything. Sometimes you will have a fabric that you need to change the tension on. You can just literally take it up or down as you need to. You can set the machine for twin needle. There isn't just one setting, so I can go in and change the spacing of those needles. So 1.6 is the smallest, you've got 2, 2.5, 3, and it should go all the way up to 6. There we go. And once you've got the size you want, you just click OK, and you know it sets it at a 3mm space twin needle. I'll take that off, otherwise that will cause somebody some problems later. Stitch with safety. If you happen to have a straight stitch plate, we haven't got one for this machine yet, but I think before too long there may well be. You can tick that box and it will stop you doing a side to side stitch. So if you've only got a small hole in your needle plate down here instead of this wide zigzag plate, you can avoid breaking needles. Basically, it's not going to let you make a mistake and select the wrong stitch. And lastly, we've got languages, lots of different languages. One of our dealers, I think one of the ladies is Spanish, so that's quite helpful for her. Obviously defaulted to English, but if it's easier for you in a different language, then all good. And audible alarm turns the noise off, so we can do that. Contrast, we can change the contrast of the screen if we want to, and that's your software version. And remember we said about the machine being updatable. That's the software version that's in this machine, and if there's been a newer one out, it will have a different number, obviously higher than that, and you'll know that you need to update your machine from that if you need to check. That is it on the sewing side, and we're now going to move on to the embroidery side, and yeah, whole new thing to learn.